meet in Hinsdale, New York on the fourth Wednesday of every month. We're a very diversified group, and just these four are mainly the doll makers in our group. We all have an interest in dolls, or teddy bears, or miniatures, but the main focus is dolls. We make and dress and collect and play with, and we have teas, and we do displays. We've done several at local libraries, which are well received. The kids as well as the adults really enjoy them. We've had several doll shows, have dolls to sell, several that the girls have made. Our club formed in the early 1970s. They first met in different members' homes. We have about 18 members, most of whom we all support and belong to UFDC, which is United Federation of Doll Clubs. It supports education and preservation of dolls, and they do a marvelous job. There's a website, they do a lot of different things. They have a museum, which is awesome. We all work together, we all do things together, we all party together. We're just a family, and we're always looking for new members, and you don't even have to be interested in dolls. Don't hesitate to come to a meeting or give one of our members a call. You can just come and set in on a meeting or programs. We have, most every month, a member will give a program on a particular doll that either they collect or that they just bought. We all like Ginny Doll. She's from the 1950s and 60s, and she's a lot of fun. And we do service projects, 2 or 3 a year. We've done lap robes for senior citizen homes and assisted living facilities. We've collected dolls and put together gift baskets for kids.
Food drive.
Food drive, we do a food drive 3 or 4 times a year.
We support Bright Alternatives.
Bright Alternatives we support, which is a pregnancy-based, family-type organization. They educate, help families in any way that they can, pretty much. They're a good group. We supported them for years. They have offices in Bradford and Wellsville.
My name's Carol Riggs, and I am the president of Northwestern New York Penn Doll Club. And I'm going to show you the process that I go through when I make some of my self-sculptured dolls. First, I have to figure out a pattern, and I usually start out, but sometimes it's on an envelope, and then I go to a little bit stiffer stuff and draw it out on muslin, white muslin, or cream-colored muslin, and then if the doll is small enough, like these dolls over there, I'll show you in a second. I just draw the pattern right onto the muslin and then sew on the muslin all the way around the pattern. And some of it's hand sewn. Some of these are done with the machine. It's a little bit easier. But then when I go to stuff them, you try to hide the stuffing crack here. Here's the stuffing crack where this stuff gets stuffed in with a pencil or a stick or whatever you have. You want it to pack really well. This doll was going to be more like a fashion doll. This, so her legs will go like this with a straight through to the other leg so that they're movable, and her arms will do the same thing, will be up here, and then the head gets put on last. These dolls right here will show you that these are sewn right onto the fabric, and I go right along the guideline of where the pattern is, and you just sew just all the way around, and then I split the back, go up the back, the spine, and open that up, and then turn them and stuff them that way. And these are the same. These are gollywog dolls. they start with this pattern, and then they come out like this, and then you stuff them really hard, and then this was the gollywog doll. And gollywogs are English, and they come, there's a story about gollywogs, the adventure of two Dutch dolls and the gollywog, in 1895 by an author, Florence Kate Upton. And I had a friend who came from England, and she would talk about gollywogs, and for a long time I didn't know what she was talking about. And then it wasn't she, but there was an article in a magazine that showed all the gollywogs and different stories that they're in. These dolls, back to this little small one, these were favors that I made for the club. And so after you get the doll, then the process of dressing them and putting their hair on and embellishing them a little bit, they're just fun dolls to do. I love to do things like that. These are flower fairies that we made for a luncheon, I believe. My introduction to the Doll Club was that I went to a luncheon up near Buffalo, and I had gone with a friend who makes stump dolls, I think that's what they're called, and she hand painted the outside of them. Kathleen Runfola was her name, and this Doll Club said they were from Hinsdale, and so I am not a person that usually gets up and talks to anybody. I tend not to talk too much, but I was very proud of myself. I went to that table and asked them if their Doll Club had new members, they would accept new members. And they said, sure, come to the next meeting on Wednesday. And I was right there. I was in, and that's where I've been for a number of years. Now I'm president, that's right. These dogs were made by Wendy and I, and they are Jenny's dog, Sparky, right here in this book. It talks about Jenny and Sparky. And we made about 80 of them for a luncheon, and I still like to make them there. I made the pattern, his legs move, and he's quite a fellow. We like Sparky. And then this is a Jenny dress that I made, and her panties. She's going to be dressed in this for spring. And these are hanky dolls. They're made out of a hanky. I had a baby shower for a lady who lived next to me, and I had about 45 of these in a wicker basket for people to take. So lots of red hair, because I made them all red. Down here is another example of the gollywog doll. Wendy made this doll. And then I have animals. I like to do animals. This is a mouse that is made for this book called The Mouse and the Motorcycle. And it's got a tennis ball for its hat and its long tail, because he wraps that around his arms when he's flying around on his motorcycle. And this mouse is from this Word of Mouse. And that Karen wanted the book to have a companion. And the very last thing, that I've got are these animals, the same process of it. I figure out the pattern, cut the pattern out, and then I go from there to do the pieces. This is a leg pattern, and I put it on here so that I can figure out where the legs go. These are the two legs. And then the legs on the animal are then movable. Then we cut them out of felt. I love to work in felt. It's very forgiving. And this is from this story, A Visit to Santa, Margaret Evan Price. And this was a penguin. I'm not sure the penguin's in there or not, but this was also a penguin that was made out of felt. And this was a hedgehog that I made for Wendy because she likes hedgehogs. And that's the kind of doll I do.
My name is Wendy Kenyon, and I'm a member of the Southwestern New York Penn Doll Club. I've been a member for probably 15 years, and I'm the treasurer. I like to costume dolls. I do make dolls, but my favorite thing is costuming. This is probably the oldest doll. Dolls have been around since the beginning of time. They were sticks, stones, potatoes, anything to give something to a child to play with. They also were an educational toy. They used dolls to teach little girls how to be mothers, to be able to nurture and take care of their families. And they taught sewing. Little girls would have a doll and they would sew for the doll, taught them to make things, clothing and handkerchiefs and samplers. This doll was a project, you notice she doesn't have a costume because I haven't done that yet. For a DAR project, we were supposed to research our patriot and make a costume for a doll. And of course that would have been in the 1700s, the Revolutionary War era. And while there's not a story to go with this doll, I used books, were a major part of it, to do research. I had to find the doll, what kind of dolls that they played with in the late 1700s, which were mainly English, and they had hand-carved wooden dolls called Queen Anne's, were the most popular. And this is my adaptation of a Queen Anne doll out of cloth. And I also have several books on how to dress her. It's amazing to me to find out that no one wore underpants until like the late 1800s. That was a surprise to me. This doll is also an example of the 1800s. It's a very simple doll. It's called a plain linen doll, and all it is a piece of cloth rolled into a tube. There's two tubes, smaller tubes for arms. The top of this tube is her head. I made a cap for her, and this is her body. It's just a rolled tube for little girls to play with. Let's see, this one, this is my costuming. I did not make this doll. Mellow did. But her inspiration, we did her for a library display on dolls from books. We did dolls in literature, stories. I got the idea from a paper doll book, which I like paper dolls too. This is The Sad Little Princess, which there is a hardcover storybook, The Sad Little Princess. This is the story of the paper doll taken from that book. There are many costumes. Doll is an example of just a soft sculpture. Simple doll from the Betty doll from this storybook by Patricia Polacco. And there's this was a doll that was made for a little girl by her grandmother, and a story about this doll and their adventures. I tried to copy the doll, the clothing isn't. It's hard to get fabric to go exactly. This doll I made, a Cupid doll. We have a doll member who collects Cupids, and for her birthday, I made her this doll. I don't know, most people have heard of Cupid dolls. They were small bisque sculptures. There was hundreds of them, and they were doing all different things. Rosie O'Neill was the creator. It came to her in a dream in her garden. And they're always nude, but I made a little suit for this one. And the interesting thing about Cupies, they were made by the Penn Doll Company, which was in Port Allegheny, Pennsylvania. They were totally made there, which is, I found that quite interesting. We actually visited there on a road trip our club took. Talked to the gentleman who had a museum there of the Cupid dolls. That was fascinating. This is another doll that I just dressed. This doll belongs to Sandy. She's a fashion doll, small fashion doll. And I made her outfit, her jewelry, her shopping bag. This is another example of the dolls that we do. This is they're gnomes, but actually they're Swedish, and they're a tomte or a nisse. Tomte? Okay, I don't speak Swedish.
I am half Swedish,
You
but I
know.
don't speak it either.
And the idea behind these little guys, I made it out of a spool and felt, is that if you have one in your home, they bring you good luck. So I made everybody in the club one.
If
These little guys, they were also for a display in a library on our dolls in literature. This story is from Australia. There's several different, it's like a series of stories. Snugglepot and Cuddle Pie. And they're a fairy type doll. And they're always getting into trouble. They remind me a lot of the Cupies, because they're just small dolls. And any clothing they have is just a hat and maybe a loincloth, which I gave them, so it's a little more modest. Oh, this little girl, her skirt fell down. Just to represent a dandelion. But they have all kinds of adventures. And the thing is with these stories, like I said, it came from Australia. It's different than it's almost like an Aesop's fable, where they're kind of scary and bad things happen. But they're still a lot of fun to read, and it was even more fun making the dolls. This is another type of doll from the Tasha Tudor books, Annabelle. And this is a doll in her trunk. She has many accessories that go with her. And of course, Annabelle had accessories for all the letters in the alphabet. And I've done most of them. I love Tasha Tudor's illustrations. They're just very sweet. She has many books. She illustrated everything from greeting cards to storybooks to towels and just anything. They've used her illustrations. A is for Annabelle, which was her grandmother's doll, which I've tried to copy here. And then it goes through the alphabet. Okay, her shawl. I is for India, which is where her shawl came from. This is the shawl. This is actual Indian printed fabric. I was lucky to have a little piece of that. Of course, parasol. P is for parasol. She has a sewing kit and hat and a tea set. All different little items in her trunk. Travel dolls or dolls in trunks are another whole area of doll collecting that's a lot of fun. The last one I have, this is from a storybook, which I don't have a storybook, but I'm sure most everyone knows the story of Thumbelina. This was also a luncheon favor that we did. And I dressed the doll in a little illustration that was in a book, and this is her garden setting.
Sandy, and I'm also a member of the Doll Club. I've been there for about 9 or 10 years now. And I really enjoy the ladies. I've learned a lot about different dolls. I wasn't a doll collector until they all came along, and I told them they're a really bad influence on me sometimes. One of the best things that I've learned with them, my fondest memories, is when we started doing the teas, and we would gather at Carol's house, and Karen Ostrom handed me this book and said, would you make that doll? So that's where the Babushka doll came from that you see down there in the front. And I made about 13 of those, all for Doll Club members. I have one at home, but she's not done yet. So that's typical, at least for me anyhow. The next year we were doing fairy tales, and I wanted something different, so I found the Midsummer Night's Fairy Tale, and I saw Sneasel. So Sneasel was the next one that I did, and I really enjoyed kind of making that one. He was lots of fun, something different than a regular doll. And this is Princess and the Pea. I had this bed at home. Sometimes those are the things that inspire what you do, are the things that you have, and I wanted to get rid of the bed. So I kept saying, I'll do the Princess and the Pea. So I still have it, but if anybody's interested in it, it's theirs. So I keep packing it away. I have some little ones these are all the storybook ones that I have. I don't have them, only that one is mine. But I have a stack of books of ones that I'd like to make. But some of the other dolls that I've done are this little fairy that belongs to Wendy. I have this little doll that was dressed in our club colors, pink and black. And then I also like to do character dolls. This is my mother-in-law, Anna. She came about when she was very ill with cancer, and my daughter wanted something of hers, so I made the doll for her, and the doll has all of her items. This is a blouse that she wore, her pants, those are her glasses, and these are actually her sneakers. Those are the insoles of her sneakers that I used for the doll. She used to make a lot of sock monkeys, and I do some, but I also do a lot of Halloween, something easy. They were inspired by the sock monkeys that she used to do. The clown in the front was a gift to Karen. I don't do too many clowns, but every now and then I might make one here or there. This is my husband, John. He was upset when I made a doll of a man and it didn't look like him, or I didn't name it after him. So this is his. We go to the movies a lot. That's his popcorn. He has his hats, his hat from work, and his fire hat. He is a volunteer fireman for the last 50-some years, and I happened to find a lot of jewelry. I looked for costume jewelry, and I found a lot of fireman's pins, so he ended up with those, and he reads a lot, so these are his books down in the front. This one is my mom. My daughter had this one, and when my mom actually passed first, but she also wanted a doll of her. And you can see here, this one was done probably about 10 years ago. This one I probably did about 7 years ago. And I should mention that I learned how to make dolls from Betsy Orlando, who's gonna come on next. She taught me how to needle sculpt. She taught me how to tie-dye a t-shirt, and actually it's the fabric that I use the most. I still tie-dye or tea-dye shirts, and that's what I use for fabric. And my mom liked to crochet and to knit. This is her sweater. She always had a perm, so she's got perm rods in the back of her hair. She liked to rock. She taught my daughter to play dominoes. She rolled up a newspaper. She didn't like one of the cats that we had, so she used to do that. And she played bingo a lot, and she taught my daughter to play Chinese checkers. So she's kind of what I call character dolls. I've done a few of those for different people, but not as big as these are. And then this little guy at the end, I brought him along because he sits in my sewing room, and I found him. There's all sorts of places to get inspiration, and one of them is on Facebook, of all places. And I follow some doll collectors, and she had a bird that looked similar to this, and I thought, I can do that. So he doesn't look like the one she had. That's what happens. But he's kind of my little my little mascot here and there. So, and you know, we talk about inspiration, but you can find inspiration in lots of places. Sometimes they're magazines. Different types are still made. This one is discontinued, the soft dolls and animal one. But there's still, if you're interested in other types of dolls, here's Doll Castle News. They have other types. And if you're interested in making dolls, they also have books with cloth doll making on them. Okay.
My name is Betsy Orlando, and I have been a member of this doll club for a fairly short time. And my background makes me feel like I'm very different because I never liked dolls when I was a child. I always had dolls because my mother loved dolls. They had a doll business that, well, really was a collection. She had over 3,000 antique dolls. I didn't like those kind of dolls. They just had those eyes that stared at you. But every year for Christmas, well, by the way, my birthday is Christmas Eve, I always got a fancy doll, which I was always excited to get. And about 2 weeks later, it would be on a shelf somewhere, and I was busy doing something else because I much preferred to read books and play games and ride my bicycle around town. And I actually played tackle football until I was 13, but my dad was my sister also didn't care much about dolls. I have 3 daughters, and they never cared much about dolls. So how did I start doing this? Well, I started it for my mother because nothing made her happier than to get a doll. So I started trying to make dolls, and at the time there were very few places you could find patterns for dolls. But there were some, and so I made some for her, and she was always very happy to get a doll. Graduated from college, knew I wanted to be a teacher, and I knew I wanted to teach young children, and so I did that. Got married in the 60s, had my own family, and I just somehow fell into this place that my husband and I found, which is a folk school in North Carolina. It's called the John C. Campbell Folk School, and it's based on a Danish model where it's lifelong learning, there's no competition, it's just helping people to do things. And I was very fortunate to go there, and after we discovered it, we went every single year. And we both taught there at different times. And I found these wonderful dolls, and I was very lucky to take classes with some of the best known doll makers that were going on at the time. So I learned a lot of things about that, and I learned that I don't want to use clay. I don't want to use even the kind that just dries by itself. I like fabric, so all my dolls are pretty much fabric. And yes, you did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Doing those spaces. And the other thing that I learned there that was very useful to me, there's a doll maker who has passed away now, but she's been very, very famous and sells dolls for millions, thousands of dollars. And I took a couple of classes with her, and the classes there are a week long, and you can work all night if you want, and it's just a wonderful place. But when I took the class with Akira Blunt, is her name, she spent a day and a half just showing us how to do the face, and it took that long. And so at the end of that second day, she said, okay, you're ready, go make a pattern for the body. And I went, I don't know how to do that. So they gave me a piece of paper that had a female and a male body. And most dolls are 8 heads tall. So and then you figure that out, and then you figure, oh, I guess my hand goes down about halfway to my knee, that's how big the arm should be, and so forth and so on. And but then you also had to realize that there's a roundness that has to be accounted for as well as just the arm. So a lot of trial and error and a lot of throwing things away that just didn't work. So from there on, I just loved making dolls, and I made a lot of Santa Clauses because my birthday is Christmas Eve, and I have a pretty large collection of those. And, well, I'll show you the 2 I brought here. Well, actually, I need that one too, but we were doing, when we moved here to Allegheny County, I didn't know anybody who did what I did, and it was kind of lonesome. I just wanted to be around other people who felt the same way I did and who made things. But this was for sort of a contest, or it was, I think one of the first times that they took a tour around the whole country in libraries for children, and that you were to make something from a book. So, one of my favorite stories, I was a kindergarten teacher for 26 years, so you'll have to excuse me. This is Hecate Peg, and she is a bad, bad witch. But she has only one leg, so that this leg is a stick. And these are the different things she brings into the house to fool the children when their mother goes away. Anyway, that's the story. Part of a club that was on the internet. And so they were going to have a contest to make a doll that was from the storybooks of Harry Potter. And I read all those books and loved them, and so I decided I would make something of the Harry Potter books. And so I think it was about the time when the second one had just come out, so I was flipping through it, and when I came to a place where they were discussing that, the schools, Gryffindor and all the other ones, and he is, everybody thinks he's Shakespeare, but he's not. He is nearly headless Nick, the ghost of Gryffindor Tower, and when I read the description, it said, ghost in rough and tights. I said, I have to make this because I love doing the costumes. So I did a lot of research on the costumes for him. It would have been better if his head did tip, but at that point I wasn't going to ruin it. And this book, here in Oscar, these in. I did make this doll. I almost forgot that I had, but he's Pinocchio. And she wanted him to be part of this thing, so I have. But right now, what I like to make is, I'm very fond of witches. And witches don't all have to be scary and miserable. I taught a week-long class at the folk school around Thanksgiving time one year, and I said, you don't have to make the Halloween witch. There's all other kinds of witches. There are white witches, there are winter witches, there are garden witches, there are witches of all kinds, and those people were wonderful. They just took off and made witches of all different kinds. And I don't care much for clowns, but I love jesters, so I make a lot of jesters. And it's just been a wonderful time, and sometimes I look at things and think, how did I ever do that? But I make my own patterns and just go from there, and very seldom have I ever had an idea for a doll and it came out just the way I was thinking of it, because they always change while you're working on them. I say, no, I don't want to wear that. Make me a different dress. So anyway, it's been a wonderful hobby for me, and that's about all I can say.